I invite you, can you hear me? Hello? Some of you may think this is the best day ever, but I want you to know we have backups to the backups of the microphones. Jeremiah chapter 20. It is one thing to have bad news. It is one thing to have to tell somebody bad news. But if that is all that you have to tell people, that could be a drain. Page 1110 in our Pew Bible, if you're following along, Jeremiah is someone who is, if you will, encased in bad news. The Lord has called him in Jeremiah chapter 1, given him a message of judgment that he has to preach to the people. There is hope within it, but the initial 70 years that Jeremiah speaks of captivity, that is a hard thing to hear. Now, normally people don't like to hear bad news. I don't know about you, but I'm not a big bad news guy either. I would much rather, if you come up to me and say, you want to hear the good news or the bad news? I promise you, I don't want to hear the bad news. Nobody wants to hear the bad news. Nobody's running around, oh, tell me the bad news. Please, please, please. No. We all want to hear the good news. You won the lottery. Woo, good news. You get a new car. Whatever good news there could come with that. You have a new car. We all like good news. In fact, we hate bad news so much. There are people who will not go to the doctor when they are sick because they don't want to hear the bad news. They're not interested. Now imagine if you had a ministry where the entirety of what you had to say was bad news. As you can imagine, this would wear you down. People would see you and, oh man, here he comes. Mr. Bad News. That guy doesn't have anything good to say. And yet this is where Jeremiah found himself. It can sometimes be a heavy load to carry the truth, can it not? It can be a heavy load to have to tell people the things that they don't necessarily want to hear, but they absolutely do need to hear. That can be a tough place, and that's where Jeremiah found himself. Because avoiding the truth doesn't make the truth go away. Is that right? I mean, we can, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I promise you, that doesn't make things go away. I know this for a fact. There are many times, and I'm sure many of you are in this same boat, I have sat in my little classroom seat, and I have imagined and dreamed of a straight A. And it has not happened. We cannot avoid the truth that I didn't study, I didn't do the homework, and I don't know the material. Jeremiah comes, and he is one who bears the bad news. Avoiding the truth is not going to help anyone. But we also have to understand that invariably, inherently, the truth is not painful. It is just simply the truth. Jeremiah has been telling the folks, the Israelites, judgment is coming. Captivity is coming. Prepare yourselves. And so, we read in chapter 20 of Jeremiah the complaint that he has. You deceived me, Lord. Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 7. You deceived me, Lord, and I was deceived. You overpowered me and prevailed. I am ridiculed all day long. Everyone mocks me. Whenever I speak, I cry out, proclaiming violence and destruction. So the word of the Lord has brought me insult and reproach all day long. You deceived me. This is not what I thought this job was about. He's complaining. We've all been there, have we not? Complaining. My family, we had an expression of ball bagging. I don't know where that came from, but it was always followed by quit. Quit your ball bagging. I don't know. Whenever I heard that, I was like, uh-oh. Okay, I'm fine. Jeremiah comes, and he has been delivering a hard, truthful message, but a hard message. He comes to the Lord, and he says, I can't believe this is the job that you've given me. It has brought me insult all day. Sometimes, when you stand for the Lord and you stand for righteousness, the world doesn't like that. They're willing to mock you, and we have to be willing to live with that. Jeremiah was there. He goes on to verse 9. But if I say I will not mention his word or speak any more in his name, so if I decide, that's it, I've had it, I'm not going to say another thing. If I just keep my mouth closed, I won't have to experience all the insults and the reproach and the mocking and all of that goes with that. But I want you to notice something at the second part of verse 9. But if I say I will not mention his word or speak any more in his name, his word is in my heart like a fire. It is the truth that is burning within Jeremiah. It is the truth that I have a word that the Lord has given me. I have to deliver it. And even when I want to close my mouth and not say anything, I cannot, because it is whelming up inside. It is a smoldering fire. We have all been at a place where we are so excited with something that we cannot hardly contain ourselves. Whether it's at a birthday party or something else, and it's for us, and we're the main attraction, and people are going to bring us surprises. We're just so excited. It is somewhat like that. Jeremiah says, I've tried to keep my mouth closed, but the truth that God has given me to declare to the people is a smoldering fire inside me, and I can't put it out. He goes on. It's not all he says. His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. Think about this. He started in verse 7 being weary of the message he had to declare because of all the insults and all the things that were coming back to him. As he lays out his complaint, he says, I'm not going to say anything anymore, but I can't. It is inside. It is a fire. I cannot put it out. I cannot contain it. And now the thing I am weary of is not the mocking of verse 7, but it is in holding the truth, verse 9. His weariness has changed. It is a message that had to be delivered. The people had to hear this, even if they didn't want it. And though he started complaining about what it is that people were doing to him, he ended up in verse 9 saying, I am tired of holding in this truth. You ever had a secret that you couldn't tell anyone? Now don't tell anybody. This is a secret. And then finally the day comes when you get to share the secret. Oh, what a relief. You feel like you've been set free from prison. Yes, I can tell them about the present they're going to get. You see this with little children, don't you? Don't ever tell little children secrets, FYI. They are the worst secret keepers ever. They will rat you out just as quick. Now, don't tell your mom that we're doing this. All right. Mom, guess what we did? Oh, I can't tell you. It's a secret. Dad told me not to tell you about the ring that he bought you. Oh! I couldn't keep it in. I was weary of them giving the message, and now I'm more weary of having to keep the message in. What is true at Jeremiah's time is true for us today. People still need to hear the truth. People are in places where they often don't want to hear the truth, but they still need to hear the truth. And we need groups of people, individuals, who would be willing to stand for the truth, who would be willing to allow the message of the gospel and God's truth and his righteousness to speak through them as they live and the things that they say. That still needs to happen today. But what is also true of Jeremiah's time and us today is that there are times when we get weary of telling the truth. And we spend some time in our own lives in Jeremiah 20, verse 7. I didn't know this is what it was going to be like. We recognize that when we are weary, when we are tired, that we may want to sit aside, but we can't. Because the truth of the message must go out. And I would pray and hope that you would have it in your heart that you could not keep silent. People need to hear the truth. Now, I grant there are times where we keep quiet. There are times where we are weary of, as Scripture says, of well-doing. And we watch the news, and we see the reports, and the things flash up on Facebook, and we are filled with discouragement. What is going on? That was true in Jeremiah's time, and it is true for us. But we have the truth that is inside of each and every one of us. And it is precisely for moments like this that we need the Lord's table. We need the Lord's table in these times where we are weary, where we are tired, when we are in a place where we are feeling the discouragement, where the pressures of this world and the truth of the message that was in it is putting us in this weird place where we don't feel like saying a thing. And yet in our hearts, we cannot keep silent. It is more tiresome to hold the truth in than it is to speak the truth. As Passover was for the Israelites, so our Lord's Supper is for us today. It gives us a time of contemplating what was, what had happened in the past. We have sang the songs this morning of that. We have heard the scriptures read of that. Wonderful lesson here for the kids. When times we forget, we recognize that as we gather here today, that it is the Lord's table that we come to as folks who, yes, can be weary. But at the same time, the truth is in us, and we cannot keep it in. It fulfills for us several roles. It is the reminder of our salvation, this Lord's table. The bread as the body, wine as his blood, that which was given for us. And we gather around to remember what Jesus did on our behalf. It is also, we read, a proclamation of the gospel itself. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. As oft as you eat and drink, you proclaim the gospel. So we have the reminder, we have the proclamation. And as we partake of this Lord's Supper, it is us declaring, as they did in that first century, Jesus is Lord. And finally, this Lord's table is for us a rest for the weary. It is here at this Lord's table that we recognize and understand that it is ultimately everything belongs to the Lord. Our salvation rests in him. Our house is built, the song said, on Christ's foundation. And though we come to this table in a world and a time where things are up and down and confusing and seemingly out of place, we come to this Lord's table knowing that it represents the eternal one true God. And it is our opportunity to remember, reflect, on what he has done for us. We do this as a church, individually, you as you're sitting there, but we also do this collectively. Because you may not feel like Jeremiah today, but Jeremiah chapter 20, my friend, is coming. And there will be times where you will be the one complaining. This is an opportunity for us to experience the reflection, the remembering, the proclamation, and the rest that the Lord's table brings to those who have expressed their faith in Him. Before we have our deacons come to serve the elements to us this morning, I want to take an opportunity to, it tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 28, that we should consider carefully our hearts and minds before we come to this Lord's table. 11:28 reminds us of that. So I'm going to give you an opportunity. Something that we don't do a lot of, and probably we need a little bit more of. Just a quiet moment for you to reflect. Maybe you are Jeremiah today. A bit weary. Maybe that's not where you're at, and there's an excitement for you about what Lord is doing in your heart and life. So for these next moments, let us reflect on this Lord's table.